Set this to 10. And then that should be fine. So now I'm going to find a lab coat that'll fit me because I don't think this works. And then one for each internal standard. I'm just going to transfer it into here. And the MSTFA. So we have that. This just keeps it to where it's like in a working condition, because if you have it in like a smaller container, then it's going to be really annoying to pull out of. So this just makes it easier to work out. So if I could just get another 5 of these with the caps on, then those are, because basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my initial 5 that I'm going to have set as my kind of like, just to transfer them out of the ampules. And then after that, I'll actually have my 5 that I'm going to use for my reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
5 more sensors?
Yeah, 5 more sensors. Gloves, but they didn't get urine time, so I'm just going to be careful. So, that's all. That was in testing, that was an English major, so.
Wait, really?
I'm just going to take everything out of here, which of course this is freaking zip tied shut. That's fine.
Can you get those scissors back?
No, it's okay. Who's familiar with breaking ampules?
No.
Nope.
All right, then we're going to go through ampule technique, because the first time I had somebody break an ampule when I was lab manager, they sliced their finger open. So we're not going to have that happen today. So yeah, you basically, the way that this works is they basically put the chemical in here, and then it's, I don't have to have it in. And then it's basically like torched shut. So then this is like a etched surface. So then all you do is just snap it. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple ways that you can go about this. If you're comfortable enough, you can just snap it with your fingers, but you can also use an ampule breaker. But the important part is basically snap away from your finger, so then the cut surface doesn't slice you. And then that's basically it. It's nothing crazy. Oh, and then can I also get some glass pipettes? That would be good. That is put against the calibration curve, and then that's how you're able to actually do your analysis.
So that's
Yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing. That's fine.
Just one.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, just, if you can, I can just take a box.
Oh,
Yeah, that's fine. I don't need like a certain, I'll just have my working area in here, and then I'm probably just going to do like 2 containers of these just to be safe. These standards have all of the glycerides in them, so they have mono, di, and triglycerides, and then they also have free glycerin. So those are going to be all the things that you're going to study in D6584. Mm-hmm. And then MSTFA is basically the chemical that, what you're doing is called a silation reaction. So you're basically taking the silyl group that's in MSTFA and then basically tacking it onto the end of all of your heavy glycerides. Because in order for it to be gas chromatography, all of your analytes, so the things that you're analyzing for, have to be volatile. So that's what makes it volatile.
Okay.
So, but it actually, I guess you're almost silating all of them, because in order for it to silate, it has to have an oxygen. And so the triglycerides, for instance, are not oxygenated, so they are not going to silate. But all your other things will.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I overcomplicating? Okay. Just making sure. Sometimes I can get a little too jargony. Hey, there's one thing that you learn to do as a chemist is how to pour from one container into another container.
Yeah. And what's the heptane for?
So it's going to be used as our diluent. And so when you're doing your initial reaction, it's you're going to let it sit for 20 minutes. And then at the end of it, you add the heptane basically to dilute it enough to where it'll stop reacting.
Gotcha.
And also the kind of thought process is that your biodiesel is a drop-in fuel for diesel, so you want to take a biodiesel molecule and dilute it in like something that'll be similar to like basically a hydrocarbon.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes the most sense chemically.
Okay.
Always kind of under the auspice of I like to use the hood as a splash guard as well. Mm-hmm. So I like to keep the sash as low as possible. Mm-hmm. There's some people that kind of have differing views than me, but that's just how I like to operate. So.
It'll be better. Go too high. What? It'll be better. Maybe go too high. He doesn't like that too much.
Well, so there's kind of like, you sort of have to, it's sort of a double-edged sword. So there's kind of like, depending on what you're doing in a hood, you don't want it to be too low because then you're going to create turbulence. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that there's like a smooth flow of air that's happening, because the most important part is whatever fumes are generated in here are not going to go away from you. So like the other thing is like make sure that you're working in the hood deep enough in, because if you're working like right near the edge, then you're possibly not going to have enough space.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm being redundant or if I'm telling you something that you already know, that's perfectly fine. Just tell me that, and then I'll keep moving on. It's been a while since I've been in school, so I don't know what they teach you youngins. So I really shouldn't be saying that because I'm like 26, so I don't know how much older I am than you. But here we are. Okay, so butane triol is internal standard 1, and tricapran is internal standard 2. So butane triol is used as their internal standard specifically for free glycerin, and then tricapran is used as the internal standard for everything else.
Okay.
So the thought process is that tricapran is heavier, so that's why you'd use it for the heavier molecules. And butane triol is tiny, so that's why it would make sense to use it for free glycerin. So basically, free glycerin is analogous to glycerol.
Yeah.
Because basically, the test is called free and total glycerin. So you'll be doing free glycerin, and then the total glycerin is a formula that takes into account the monodiene triglycerides. And then basically estimates what the total glycerin is inside the sample.
So the butane trial is only going to get the free glycerin, and then what was the other one?
Tricapran.
Tricapran, that's going to get all the monodienitrides?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so how do I want to do this? Just trying to break it. If those, you're also using the internal standard as like a way to verify that your system is working properly, because basically you'll do like a set of internal standard injections, and then that peak area should stay relatively the same. And that peak area will take into account adjustments or variations of the auto sampler. So like if you have tiny fluctuations, that will remove that error from your analysis. So that makes it to where it's a little bit easier. I can put on gloves, I promise. This takes me a couple times apparently. Okay. Sorry, I'm kind of having to jerry-rig all of this. Huh?
They look like motor,
I think these are covered system, right? I'm doing this because I'm more comfortable with this. If this is like, if you have smaller hands or if you feel like that you're losing dexterity, do whatever you feel like is comfortable. So like if we obviously had the ampule breaker, I would prefer to do it that way, but since I don't, I'm just going to do it this way. So I'm going to keep this as flat as possible, and then basically going to use this finger as a brace and then basically break that way. Like that. And then I'm going to, I like to pipette out. You don't have to pipette out if you don't want to, but that's just my preference. I'm just going to put this down so I don't drop this. And then you're just going to leave everything in the hood overnight to evaporate. So the internal standard is really not that big of a deal, how fast you pipette this out, but the other ones, it'll be kind of important. Or the MSTFA, it'll be kind of important, because the MSTFA in the presence of oxygen will immediately start to oxidize. So you kind of want to move that as quickly as possible. When we get to the point of doing these, like the internal standards, or sorry, the actual standards themselves, it's important to get like legitimately a milliliter. Because if you like, technically those vials say that there's a mill, but if you break it and pour it in there and it's not exactly a mill, then you have to redo it.
Yeah.
Because you can't actually do your calculations unless you know exactly what's in there.
Gotcha.
We have the method on the GC, right? Did Dr. Williams say that?
That's what she's trying to do. Like seeing how well. Oh, because that's the one that Tate started, because he was trying to say you didn't need to cook for 8 hours.
Yeah, I like to pipette it out so I can get everything. That's just kind of like me being anal. You could technically pour it, but since I don't have the special gloves, then I'm gonna be more careful. I mean, if you get like a tiny bit of pyridine on your hand, it'll be fine. But I'd rather be safe than sorry. Okay. So there's that. Okay, MSTFA time. Allergy eyes, so that's why I'm kind of like. In the future, there's two ways that you can do this. So you can either do it to where you do the full mill, or you can do it in half. And you can do 500 microliters and then have saved 500 microliters. So the thought process behind the two is that if you think that you're gonna possibly mess it up and you don't have a backup, then you split it and you just half everything. So right now it's 1 mil, 100 microliters of internal standard 1, 100 microliters of internal standard 2, 100 microliters of MSTFA, 8 mils of heparin. But if you do it half, then half all those. So if you're feeling like maybe the column is really degraded and you don't know if recalibrating it is going to be healthy or not, or is going to help or not, then you can kind of do this half trick. I'm going to do the full because I don't know why it wouldn't work. So that's just kind of my thought process. Plus, in any case, saving half of it is going to go bad quickly, so there's really no reason to try to like save all of it.
Yeah. What was the ratio on that again?
So 1 mil of the internal standard, or sorry, not internal standard, of the standard, and then 100 microliters of both internal, or 100 microliters of internal standard 1, internal standard 2, and MSTFA, and then 8 mils of heparin. Yeah. Okay, so let's make sure that I'm grabbing the right one, because how funny would that be if I put the wrong standard in the wrong thing? Right here is going to be like pretty much like really, really close to a mil. So you want to get like every little last morsel out of here that you can. And these are all like distinct mixtures. So like you want to avoid contamination at all costs. Because you're basically assuming that you know exactly what's in there. And if you don't, then you won't be able to calibrate. Which I already said that, so okay. So yeah, it'll just say like what internal standard solution is, 1 through, so 1 being the lowest concentration, 5 being the highest.
So each of those 5 vials is another internal standard that we're measuring things?
So these are the 2 internal standards, and these 5 vials are different concentrations of free monodiene triglyceride. Or I guess free glycerin, monoleum, dioleum, trioleum, because you're calibrating a specific glyceride. Because you're going to assume that for what you guys are doing, the fatty acid profile of your biodiesel is going to be very specific. In biology, you're going to be more likely to see even numbers. So you're going to most likely see C16 and C18 glycerides. So that's monopalmitin, or I think that's like palmitin and olein, I think. Maybe, yeah, so like C16, C18, maybe some C17. That's going to be kind of like your main thing. So that's why they calibrate against olein at C18, because that's kind of like the most common fatty acid for biodiesel. This is based off of soybean oil.
Yep.
That was satisfying. This is what happens when I do this. I just get more ballsy as it keeps going, and then it'll be fine.
Did you take that page up, or is that one?
Wanted us to all do this in like smaller quantities, so she had this all like group me. So if you guys ever have questions for me, let me. Last one. Familiar with how to use an auto pipetter? Everybody? Okay, so that's fine. So the only thing that I like to be like extra conservative with it, and I like to prime it first before I do my initial pull. So that's really the only difference really the only thing I'm gonna do differently than probably how you were taught. Because I've learned that sometimes if you don't prime the pipette tip first, then it won't necessarily behave. And you'll get different amounts. So especially when you get to the internal standard. So for these 5, you're gonna have to use 5 different pipette tips. But then once you get to the internal standard, you can use the same one for all 5. The only reason that you want to be like, that you want to use different tips for different ones is if you're concerned about the integrity of the pipetter. Or if like the sample's like ultra gross or something or something. So I'm just going to start with this. So I'm going to do it under an angle, so I'm going to do this, make sure that it's nice and even, make sure that you don't get any air bubbles, shoot it back. I'm going to do this a couple times with your thumb, just to get all the stuff out, and then pull again. So yeah, this is why you wanted to pull exactly 1, because there's a little bit left in there. Do that, pull from there, put this in here, do this a couple times. If you get any like dots on the outside of it, don't try to touch it down, because these are like designed to specifically like do it, unless it's like on this like corner or something like that. And I kind of like to wipe the outside just to be safe. Make sure that I don't get any outside residue on it. You can just do it on the side. You don't have to do it like on a chem wipe or anything. My workflow is I'll do all of this stuff first, and then we're going to go over to the computer and I'm going to show you everything that you need to do on the software in order to run the calibration. And then what we'll do on Thursday is the actual like analysis part.
Like calculating the area?
Yeah, you need to integrate everything the same, and then you're going to bring everything into the software. And then you're going to see how linear the curves are. Oh yeah, do we have an ASTM? Do you guys still do the ASTM cross-check?
What's that?
No.
Do we have like a silver pail that says ASTM on it?
I'm not familiar with one now.
Okay, that's fine. We'll look for it while this is silating. Also, when it is silating, it's 20 minutes minimum. If it's longer than that, it's fine. You just don't like try to do it and then leave and then come back the next day. Like if it goes for a couple hours, that's okay.
How often is calibration necessary?
It depends how many standards you run and how dirty, or not standards, how many samples you run or how dirty the GC gets. Because you basically have to like set a certain threshold, and then because basically what will start happening is the peak area of the triglycerides will start to drop, and then everything else will start to drop. And then once you hit like a certain percentage drop, then that's when you determine that you either have to cut the column or replace the column. And you only have to calibrate if you have to replace the column. So preferably, it'll only happen for you once a year. Unless Dr. Williams decides that she wants to run in-process samples, then you're going to be recalibrating a lot more often than that. Like, when I was at REG, I was recalibrating every 3 months. On multiple GCs. But also, to be fair, that was a company that was making 500 million gallons of biodiesel a year, so it's a little bit different.
How much did you make this past year? 50 gallons in batch?
So if we had a smaller pipette, then I would put it directly in and then pull straight from the vial. But since it's too big, I have trust issues. Yeah. So I put it in there first, so then I know that I have exactly what I'm doing. And also, if you decide to do the half method, then this gives you some useful snacks after. Yeah, see, like that one, I got a bubble. So now I'm going to pull a lot slower, since apparently I pull too fast. And the other thing is, like, you want to make sure that you don't pull too fast, because if you do, then the liquid will go to the, there's a filter at the top, and if you saturate that filter, then you have to replace it. Which isn't that big of a deal, you just, like, need to know if you saturated it or not.
How'd you know?
Like if you watched it and you saw that it like went up there, then it's a very high possibility. But the other thing is that you'll see that it's wet, because it should be. Oh, this does not have a filter in it. Okay, great. We need to find a filter for this. Lovely.
Dylan, what did you leave?
Okay, so these ones are just like your residues. I'm just gonna leave that in here. Okay, so now we're gonna set up our little assembly line. Okay, so depending on like how specific you want to be, you can either do one pipette tip per sample, or you can use the same thing if you feel confident in yourself. So this is your choice. It doesn't really matter. Pipette tips are not that expensive. Just never have cost be the reason why you don't want to do something. Like all the glass and the plastic stuff is all really cheap. Like, do it because it's right. Okay, so I'm going to take all the lids off. I'm just going to put them upside down because I worked for a tissue engineering lab and I was taught to do all of the lids up. So that's what I do. So it's really not that big of a deal if you switch the lids, because right now nothing's really like touched, but that's why I label the lid and the body. Because then I don't have any reason for that to, actually I probably should have put this down first, but here we are. So just scroll it down until it hits 100. Okay, now we're going to start with internal standard 1. Let's open this. So we're just going to prime it. This is where the wiping is important. So you want to make sure there's no like drips going into your sample. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1 down, 2 to go. Also, I promise you when you do this the next time, it is not going to take as long. And by then, you'll have the white laminate glove, so you can be a lot more liberal about all of this. So pull, prime. I count because I want to make sure that I don't forget. So do whatever system, like one of my coworkers at my last job, like used the pipette tip to like move them. And then that's how she knew. I, for instance, count in Russian. Because that for some reason helps me remember. Because then I stop paying attention to what everybody else is doing because I'm focusing on counting in Russian. So that's an option.
5.
Yeah,
that was the tricapran?
Yeah, that was tricapran. So I did butane trial, tricapran, and then, so MSTFA always goes last, because if you do the first 2 and then you do MSTFA, then, or if you do MSTFA first, then it's not going to go right, because the MSTFA will need to silate everything. So you want to make sure that you do MSTFA last. And then normally if you have like a smaller sample size, you'll want to just like roll this. But since this is a lot more sample, we're going to actually shake it. Do you guys have like a sonicator?
No.
Like the little blue one?
Mm-hmm.
Like the button sonicator?
Like Vortex?
Yeah, Vortexer.
There's that one upstairs.
Okay, that's fine. We're not going to take this upstairs.
Don't get it.
2, 3. See, it'll bubble a little bit.
What's a sonicator, dude?
So it basically like shakes a sample really, really fast, and it's a lot more of an efficient way of mixing it instead of trying to do it by hand. But it's really not that big of a deal. I just like the sonicator because it vortexes the sample for you. Okay, so the MSTFA is also not really that important in like concentration because you're already adding this in molar excess. Like I did the math and this is like 10 times the amount of MSTFA you need. So if you were a little off on the MSTFA, it's not that big of a deal. The most important thing is the internal standard. That has to be the same every time.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, you can get 2 of these 1,000 and set one of them to 1,000 and one of them to 100 to make that a little easier for you. You don't have to. Okay, so we can set a timer for 20 minutes. You can just use your phone. Okay, so you can just do this. So that's how you can shake the sample.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of do that.
Just give it a quick stir.
Just give it a quick stir. If you have a lot less sample, then that's when you would do the roll method, like this. Because it basically, that will give you like efficient enough mixing when it's like a tiny bit of sample. Okay, now we let this sit. To online. Now I think I already built the calibration table for this. Let's see.
Back in the good old days.
Like a month ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, were you here over the summer with Dylan?
I was. Yeah. Yeah, I was here over the summer with Dylan, and then that kind of fell off the
For how long
radar.
you were here?
I was only here for like a day
Oh, okay.
over the summer.
What'd you do with Dylan?
Solvent is going to saturate the detector. So that's what that like shark fin looks like. So you want it to be like really tall, like 1.4 or 140,000. You want it to be really tall. Preferably you wouldn't have all this crap in here, but we don't really have the purest heptane. So here we are.
Okay.
Preferably you would want 99.99% purity, but I'm not going to complain, it's fine. Okay, so you're going to go to sequence parameters, you're going to set a subdirectory.
Gosh, slow down.
You're going to go to sequence parameters, then you're going to set a subdirectory. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to make the folder where you're going to put your file. So you're going to set it, I don't care what convention you do, I do it like this, 2019-09-16. You can set it however you want, it's fine. So you click OK, and then it says, hey, this doesn't exist. Do you want to create it? You say yes. And you click OK. Okay, first step. Step 2, sequence table. Okay, so now we're going to walk over to the auto sampler. We're going to set this. So if you want to work on the auto sampler, you press the park button.
What do you mean you want to work?
If you want to if you want to set stuff on here, you'll click the park button. Because this will basically move the auto sampler over here.
Okay.
And so, is this all backwards? Since you're working in this one, it's really not that big of a deal. But basically, we're gonna, okay, these can all be thrown out. Do we have a broken glass container? Some environmental health and safety at KU is going to want to do, but we're going to need to let them know that we're generating.
Okay.
So that's just a conversation we have about the but yeah. So I'm just going to have enough for 6, so I'm going to put it through vials 1 through 6. That's where I'm going to put everything, because it's only going to inject like a microliter of sample, so if you fill a full 2 ml vial, it'll be fine. Okay, so I'm just going to... So you need to put the vial number, the sample name, the method name, how many injections you're gonna do per vial, and then the sample amount is also important. So we might need to mess with this a little bit, because I'm not 100% sure how the calculation is going to work afterwards. Or I guess here, I'm gonna actually change this real quick. Figure table. There we go. We don't need all this stuff in here. There, that makes it a little easier. Now you don't have to worry about navigating everything. Okay, so heptane 1, heptane 2, heptane 3, heptane 4. Since it's been doing stuff for a while. Okay, so we're gonna use this one, D6584 2019-0413. I think that's the one that I made with Dylan. Okay, so we're gonna do 1 injection per vial, and then the sample amount doesn't matter for this, so I'm just gonna put 1. And then you're gonna call this the same thing that you call the sample name, because the data file will be actually what the name of the file is when it creates the folder. Okay, so now we have, that's not what I wanted. Okay, of course it decides to do that, whatever. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're going to have a heptane in between each one. And you're going to start with the lowest concentration to the highest concentration. So standard 1, standard 2, Okay, so this will be heptane 4. Heptane 5. Heptane 6. Heptane 7. Heptane 8.
So you do the 3 heptanes before?
You don't have to do 3 if it's just because the oven was off. Or not the oven, the instrument was off. If you haven't had helium flowing through, then I would just do a couple heptanes just to verify. Since we've been doing it at a higher volume for like an hour, that should be enough time because it's like a 15-meter column. Gotcha. So it's not going to take that long for it to go through. Unfortunately, this thing doesn't have a fill down, so you have to literally do this by hand. Just stupid, but whatever. Oh, and then at the end, you're gonna do a standby method. So that was the FID lighting. That's a good sign. No need to. That's okay. So you're gonna set this to standby and then call this shutdown. And then you don't actually have to put anything in there because it's not going to actually do anything. So then you're going to put 1 for all of these. And then... Okay, I guess it might get mad, so I'm just going to put 7. And just not put anything in there. Okay, and now for this... I'm going to copy all these first, and then I'm going to need to remember what to put in these. A couple ways that I think what I'm going to need to do is I need to... Actually, here, I'll just do this. So, sequence. So the other thing you're going to do is save sequence templates as. Save sequence template as. So you're going to call this 2019-09-16-D6584 calibration. You basically want to give every sequence a unique name, so then it'll be easier for you to reference later. So I'm going to call this. Okay, so this is all ready to go now. It's okay, wait a second. I'll show you what I'm doing in a second.
Okay.
I'm trying not to confuse you. I just want to verify that I did this correctly. Okay, I don't have anything in these tables. Okay. That's fine. We're just gonna have to do this from scratch then. Okay. She's gonna get mad at me because I did that, so it's fine. So we have some choices we can make basically of how we would like to put this. So I'm gonna make this easier on you, and I'm just gonna set this all to 100. Because the entire point of this calibration is that you're mimicking exactly what will happen in the sample. So normally what you would do is you would do 100 milligrams of sample and then do all the internal standard of the MSTFA and then dilute. So I'm just going to pretend that we're doing that and call it good. When I did this at REG, I made my standard by hand because I was doing some extra shit. But since this is just D6584, I'm using a kit. So let's go dilute all the way through and then 3 all the way through. Which is why a dispense set would be lovely. But then again, I'd have like 30 samples in my sequence, so it kind of made sense to do it that way. Because imagine trying to do this for 30. I mean, it's fine when you have the right equipment, you know. Okay, can I get another one of these? There's a bag on the side of the thing. If you could just pop one in here for me, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Leave this. So luckily, this is real obvious when you add 5. Again, not really super important if there's like a little bit of an air bubble.
And how many mils is it? It's
8.
8. Okay.
So I'm going to do 5 all the way through and then 3 all the way through. So there's some conflicting debates on this. So my kind of thought process when you're filling in one of these flasks is that shut one of these first. There's enough in there that it'll pull it. So this you just kind of shake. This is why the vortex is nice. So you just put it on it and then you're good. Yeah, this bag isn't open. And the GC vial, this is just heptane, so I'm going to take it out of the hood. It'll be safe. So there's a couple things here. First of all, you want to make sure that you don't like super over tighten it. So like it'll have this like little indent in it. So basically like tighten it enough to where it looks like that. Not to where it's like, because if you do it enough, it'll actually give it like a little bit of a dimple. So if you loosen it enough, it'll be like that, and then if you overdo it, it'll look like that. So it's not the end of the world, but the most important part is if you look here, I filled it to the neck. If you do it like all the way, when you put it in there and you pull it up, it'll create a vacuum, and it'll pull the vial up.
Oh.
Which you don't want.
Right.
So yeah, it's like not the end of the world if you over tighten it, but just like be aware that if you overfill and do that, it'll cause a problem. Okay, so now we're gonna start filling these. I'm gonna pull all my. So I hope this was informative thus far.
Are you both cool to come on Thursday?
I know that there was a lot of people that were complaining about it in the chemistry department because they were like,
Yeah, I ended up leaving halfway through summer. Did 1 semester at JCCC. Go Cavs.
JUCO! It's been enjoyable, and I hope I've not been annoying.
Are those the slots around the
Yes.
computer?
Yes, 1 through 6, and the only other thing you have to do is click park again, so then it goes back to run mode. If you leave it parked, then it will not let you run.
Okay. Is that what you were saying? It was backwards or was that flipped?
I thought so, but apparently I just don't remember anything properly. This is right. We're gonna watch it inject anyway, so it's okay.
Okay.
So since this is all set up properly, so this says remote. You're gonna go through all of these numbers. Like the set is the same as the actual is the same as the set. So you're just gonna go through and like double check that everything is the same. You don't have to do this on this screen. You can do it on the back.
Okay.
Oh, and another thing that you can do. This is a nice like little ghetto chemist trick. So the back FID says that it's lit. So if you're having trust issues, put this over and it should fog.
Oh,
And that means you know that it's lit.
cool.
Because it's literally just burning. So that means you're producing water. So that's why it fogs. So that's a nice little trick if you're concerned that it didn't light or if it's not staying lit. Because what you should hear is, remember when you heard that loud pop?
Mm-hmm.
That means it lit.
Yeah.
If it's like or something like that, that means it did not light.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's something wrong and you have to backtrack. But assuming that you didn't do any maintenance on the GC, that shouldn't be a problem. So that should be okay. So now we're going to start the sequence. Over here, there's rinse vials. So there's rinse A and rinse B, which I guess I'm not even sure if rinse B is being used. Technically, you can literally like have 7 different rinses. And the other thing is your waste A and waste B. You want to verify that those two are not full. So I'm just going to fill this with solvent real quick. Good catch. I'm just going to fill both because I don't remember if both of them are, but with heptane, yes. So I'm just going to fill that from this table, or you can click run sequence here. So this will highlight all the ones that you're running. So this will tell you. So I'm just going to click run, and then now it'll start. So now it'll kind of like go through its thing. Now because we preset the method, then it should automatically start. It's going to kind of just run through its checks. Okay, so now let's watch it. So now it's going to do its sequence. Oh, okay, it is literally the wrong vial.
Uh-oh. Should we stop?
Yeah, just give it a second. No, it'll be fine. This is why you have the heptane. Why is this backwards? Or maybe I just put it in backwards. That's always a possibility. That's okay. The first one will just be blank. NBD. No. It'll be okay. That was my fault. It's okay. Just do that. It won't know the difference. You guys watch, because if you want to watch what this does, so I'll just step out of the way. So right now it's cleaning it. So this is important to watch too, because you want to verify that there's no air bubbles. Because if there's air bubbles, then that means that the syringe probably needs to be replaced. So that's an important thing to look after. So now it's going to go and drop, and that means that it did its injection. So now it's going to run. Okay, so that all went perfectly. Now that we know that I put it in the wrong order, so now we're good.
That was my question, is on the diagram and then Moses down, bottom right.
Yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, so I was actually stupid, so see these numbers in the front? Those will denote the number that is closest. So that means 1 started in that corner. Okay, so now let's go to the, see, look, it's rising, as you can see right here. So let's look at the real-time plot, which for some reason is really small. So see, it's getting huge right now, which, why did it just do that? Okay. There.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's sounds good.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
See you later, man.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see you Thursday.
Yeah, are you coming back on Thursday, Paul?
Yeah.
Cool. So will it only run the first one? Or did you say just to run one at a time?
It'll wait. Sorry, say that again.
Did you set it just to run the first file, or?
It'll run all of them.
Oh, okay.
So that sequence table that we built
Mhm.
is telling it to run everything.
Okay.
Okay, so this is actually kind of a problem. Actually, no, not yet.
Everything works, it's just on the right scale.
Exactly. It's you know.
Taking every map.
Okay, so let's see when the I wouldn't let these sit for more than a day. Silated.
Yeah.
These here, these will last for a while.
Well, after they've been silated, you've added the heptane.
Do not let them sit for more than a day.
Gotcha.
You can sit them, you can use them the next day, but I would avoid that as much as possible because you don't want degradation products to be a possible case for why you're seeing stuff.
Got it. But
'Cause
the
if-
internal standards and the...
Those will last.
Gotcha.
Just keep them refrigerated.
Cool.
You can keep them out for a bit. It's okay. Like, it's not like, oh my god, they have to go into the fridge immediately. But definitely refrigerate them before you leave.
Gotcha.
So yeah, these will just stay in the fridge. Then you can go get some desiccant from the chem store. Do you not have any desiccant in the grad lab?
I don't know.
That kind of surprises me.
I'll ask Dr. Williams if we have any.
Steal some from Oken.
Yeah. I've got a buddy that works in a lab over that way.
No, it's okay. Just go to the chem store and get some. It's not that complicated. Dr. Williams has a code there to use for her lab.
Yep.
So you just get it. What's the guy's name that works at the chem store who's like the manager? He's like a large guy.
I'm not sure.
Jacob?
Yeah, he's like older, I think. He's like
Do you
in his
know that?
40s.
Jacob. I have his email. I'll give it to you.
Okay, so let's stick this in the fridge, and then let's verify.